Welcome everyone again to another King Reflections episode. I'm Daniel Oliver, your host, a graphic designer and a personal trainer by trade. And today we're going to talk about owning our temptations. First, I'm just going to read some scriptures and then I'll elaborate on and break it down and elaborate on each sentence just so it's easier to understand. But the whole concept of owning our temptations is that we're owning our impulses, so to speak. We're owning our faults and flaws and being aware, becoming mindful and aware of where we're falling short, of what we can easily succumb to, immoral behaviors or actions, and trying our best to be aware of these and also try and improve them and make better choices in the future. So first I'm just going to read the scriptures and then we'll break it down a sentence as we go. So I'm reading from the book of James, and this is actually a letter to one of the churches that James writes to. I was about to say Jimes there for a second. James. So James chapter 1, verse 2 to 4, and then I'm going to read James chapter 1, verse 12 to 15. Don't mind the dogs barking in the background. We have a few dogs in our neighborhood, so just ignore them if you can hear them. So James verse 2 to 4. Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. Also, I'm reading from the New Living Translation, just so it's a bit easier to understand rather than reading the King James Version. And James chapter 1 verse 12 to 15 says, God blesses those who patiently endure testing and temptation. Afterward, they will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. And remember, when you are being tempted, do not say, God is tempting me. God is never tempted to do wrong, and he never tempts anyone else. Temptation comes from our own desires, which entice us and drag us away. These desires give birth to sinful actions, and when sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death. So let me go ahead and elaborate on these and expand these. So just to explain how and what they mean, but also how it relates to obviously us being mindful and aware of our actions and trying to choose a better attitude, a better mentality, a better way of living, but that's by calling out our own dishonesty, so to speak. And one of the songs I love called Honest by the Chainsmokers, at the very start of it, it says, there's no end to the hypocrisy of the human heart. And that's so true, because we'll always justify our actions, we'll justify what we did wrong in a way that makes us seem like the innocent one, or that we had to do it. We had to make that impossible hard decision and cross our own boundaries and our own values and our morals, and we had to break our rules a little bit just to have a better outcome, when really, was it really a better outcome? So let's go ahead and break this down. So James chapter 1 verse 2. Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. Now the word consider, that's actually a choice. To consider something is actually you having the choice to take it in as a possible or potential idea. You're choosing, you've stopped and gone, all right, which path am I going to head down? I could consider this path, I could consider that path, I could consider that path. It slows down time for you to then be able to have a choice, because it is a choice. Every action that we do, every behavior that we have, every attitude that we have, all of it is actually a choice. Sometimes we're in autopilot and we subconsciously just choose a certain path because that's how we've always done it, so to speak. But every attitude, every behavior, every mindset, every mentality that we have starts actually from a choice. We can stop and choose a different path to take, a different mindset or a different attitude to take. So this word consider, it says, consider it an opportunity for great joy. So we're going to choose. There's a potential possibility that we can choose something different than what we've already done. And then the word opportunity. An opportunity always reflects to or is on the path or the direction of a positive change or a positive outcome. It's a positive attitude of potential growth. That's what opportunity really is. It's a positive attitude to potential growth. Obviously, if something bad comes along, you don't call it an opportunity. If it's more of a I can't even think of the right word at the moment, but it's definitely not an opportunity. It's not seen as a building thing or a constructive or, a potential growth. And then it finishes off with great joy, not a little joy, not a sense of joy. It doesn't say consider it an opportunity for joy. It says great joy. And if we go back, it's kind of a juxtaposition, you could say, so that's the right word. When troubles of any kind come your way, now nobody wants to really deal with troubles. We don't really want to deal with the hard stuff. We don't want to deal with the uncomfortable stuff. But here it's saying and linking it to great joy. Consider it an opportunity for great joy. How can we consider troubles coming our way as an opportunity for great joy? But it elaborates as it continues on. So verse 3. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So when your belief has been challenged, you gain the opportunity to become stronger. And it's like, because I'm a PT, when you work with your muscles, when you challenge your muscles, your muscles are already developed in a certain strength or a certain way of moving, or it's conditioned to a certain way of life, that when you challenge it, it really challenges the fibers of those muscles to really stick to their guns and, hold it out and stay strong, or it's going to break them. But usually when you put your muscles under the test, when you challenge them in the gym, the point of going to the gym is to be continuously put under what they call micro traumas or micro tears in the muscles. When you're moving the muscle to push weight or to lift weight, you're actually challenging and putting the muscles through a little bit of trauma each time. And as time grows on, you build more muscle, you grow stronger muscle fibers, they become thicker. So they've just gained the opportunity to become stronger. So if we go back to the first verse, when troubles of any kind, when certain weights come along, like any weight really that you've got, that's a bit of resistance comes along, you could consider an opportunity for great joy. And the great joy is that you're becoming stronger, that you're becoming better, that you're becoming faster. So when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. Then it goes on to verse 4. So let it grow, for when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. So let's take this now to learning an instrument, for example, learning the piano. When you never played the piano before, you don't really have the sense of freedom to play fluently. That endurance has to be developed. That skill has to be developed. And you have to go through those challenging times and confronting your, in a sense, ego and humbling yourself, so to speak, and going, you know what, I don't know anything about the piano, so I'm going to come to this piano as a student to learn how to use the piano effectively, to learn how the keys are spaced out between each other so that I can play the notes when they need to be played, how the music is going to move me. You need to know which note or which key, or which piece of wood, so to speak, of the piano plays certain notes. And the more that you diligently discipline yourself to be at that piano to practice, that is when you can be fully developed into knowing the instrument, knowing where the notes are, knowing which notes connect with each other, knowing which notes complement each other, or which notes you can trail off to onto the next note, even if they don't relate to it all, or it seemingly doesn't relate. So once you overcome the challenges of learning the piano and learning the music, the flow of being fully developed just comes naturally to you. As most people say, like, oh, they're just naturally talented. Actually, no. They were so curious enough to sit down and actually, perfect their skill or master their skill that now it just comes naturally to them. because it's ingrained in all their fiber, in their memory, in their muscle memory. It's developed so finely within their, so to speak, their DNA, that everything just comes in a sense naturally. It looks natural. You become complete and perfect to play fluently without a second thought. The only time that the piano becomes challenging is when you're learning maybe a new sense of, or a new genre, a new style of music. You got to learn, a different beat. You got to learn different note connections, how different notes can complement each other. So putting these three verses together, verse 2, verse 3, verse 4. When you're being tested and you're going through hard times, try and focus your mentality and your attitude as a way of you're going to grow out of this. Because you can't perfect, in a sense, life, or you can't perfect, the piano instrument, or you can't even perfect, bodybuilding if you're going to the gym. You can't perfect these things if you are not challenged, if you are not put under pressure, if you're not put through obstacles that make it hard and difficult. Sometimes life has to be hard and difficult for us to learn anything, for us to grow. There has to be some form of little traumas, or maybe sometimes significant trauma, depending obviously what it is. But we have to have the mentality and the growth mindset to go, I've gone through this, but I can survive. I can push through, and I will be better from this. So moving on to verses 12 to 15. Verse 12. God blesses those who patiently endure testing and temptation. Now, the word here that I want to focus on is patiently. When I think of patience, I think of a calm serenity, or self-control of negative emotions. Like, you can be angry, but I will try my best to hold that anger in and not let it erupt. I never let the anger come out so excessively that it becomes chaos. Well, I try my best not to. Sometimes there are times that I unfortunately let my anger loose if I have peaked. But that's me knowing that I've got to understand my own limits and practice more self-control, becoming aware of it. And it says here, God blesses those who patiently endure testing and temptation. God blesses those who are patiently going through their trials and tribulations. And even if you don't believe in God, you can take this in the concept of, if you keep your mouth shut and don't say anything, there is going to be a lot more peace than if you opened your mouth and created a whole lot more destructive behavior that affects everyone else. And then you're no longer seen as a trustworthy person, or a person that can be seen as legitimate or genuine, etc. So it's always best, with your interest and also the interest of others at heart, to keep your mouth shut when you are being excessively angry and just being patient, being calm. You can be upset, you can be angry, of course, but if you act on that anger and it turns into rage, that's when it becomes very dangerous and very destructive, and it's very hard to come back from that. Continuing on in verse 12, same verse. Afterward, they will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. I want to focus on this word life and crown of life. Now, if you're wearing a crown, you're wearing it. You don't have a crown and put it somewhere. No, you have to wear that crown. So consider the concept of wearing life. You're wearing living. Awareness, complete stillness, mindfulness, observing without emotionally reacting, and able to respond with calm and accuracy is living, in my perspective. If you are reacting automatically to something and not being self-aware of where your emotions are going or where your mind, where your thoughts are heading, if you're not aware of that, you're not actually living. You're not paying attention, and you're not aware of what's actually going on within you. You're not aware of that struggle, that battle, that chaos within you, and you're just letting it all out. If you're just speaking your mind all the time in this concept or this kind of metaphor, then you are dead, because you can't even control yourself. Having the ability to control yourself, being aware, okay, I feel this emotion. I really want to say this, but I know it's going to be destructive, so I better just hold my tongue and stop saying and not say that. Maybe there's another way that I can say this without being so destructive that it's going to tear people down. Maybe I can find a way that will build them up, make them feel like that, they're not the problem. It's just that their attitudes or their behavior is the problem. And that's where I think living actually is. You're wearing that crown of being calm, being aware, taking a moment, stepping back, observing what's happening or what's occurring. If someone's even just yelling at you, screaming at you, telling you what's wrong, it's just like observing, go, okay, step back. Let me just be aware of where they're coming from. I know they're not doing this intentionally to tear me down. They've obviously got something going on in the background. Let me just respond and have a think about it with calm and accuracy, so that this doesn't escalate to an extensional point where we can't come back from. Continuing on verse 13. And remember, when you are being tempted, do not say, God is tempting me. God is never tempted to do wrong, and he never tempts anyone else. Now, a lot of people go, well, if God really loved me, he wouldn't put this temptation in front of me. And I'm there going, there is no growth without temptation. He doesn't place that in front of you. Like, we do it to ourselves. And as I've read before, and you would have heard, that this is our own temptations that are tripping up. We created this. We create the turmoil. We create the chaos. We are the ones that create a sense of entitlement to our own wants and desires. God is complete love. And I could expand on this, but it will take another 5 sessions to go through. But he doesn't tempt. He can't tempt. He doesn't put temptation in front of someone and say, survive this. No. He allows temptation to come across because that's what we've done to ourselves. He's not going to interrupt and intercede and be like, well, no, I'll block this temptation to protect you. As everyone knows in every hero story, let's say, for example, Hercules, if Zeus came down and, stopped and fought for Hercules, how would Hercules grow? How would he be able to become a better person, become strong in his own strength? And it will all be cheated. We'll be like, oh, he's just, Hercules always wins because he's got his dad on his side. It's the same thing with Jesus and God as well. If God came down and stepped in and saved Jesus from death, we'll be cheated of the story. It's just like, well, there's no salvation in that. There's no heroism in that. He could have done anything and he'd still be saved from his dad, and that's just cheating. Where it's just like, well, no, the dad allows him to learn his lessons and allows him to go through these tribulations because of making him a stronger and a better person. Obviously, there's a whole lot of layers to Jesus's death as well and resurrection. But that's with every story. We have to go through our own trials and tribulations and, in a sense, our own deaths, the deaths of the old person, so that the new person can take over, be in charge, and be strong, and take that responsibility and that diligence to do what is right and to stand up to what is attacking us or trying to overpower us. So let's continue on. Temptation comes from our own desires, which entice us and drag us away. We bring our own temptations on. We bring our own desires. Sometimes it's subconsciously done. For example, let's take on the concept of drinking excessively and we become an alcoholic. And this can be done with drugs or even workaholic, anything really. It's a form of escapism. Let's say at a young age, you're brought up with parents that weren't really the best or there for you. And let's say the parents were always aggressive and always fighting against each other, and they're always yelling at you, you're doing nothing right. You're doing everything wrong. Like, why can't you just sit still and be quiet? Why can't you just be perfect like those other kids? Like, why can't you just be smarter like those other kids? You're being brought up with that sort of mentality. It makes you question and go, well, I'm not that great of a person, am I? And then you find, alcohol, for example, or any other form of escapism. And you find comfort in that because it helps you numb out your parents' negative talk. Helps you keep them quiet in a sense. It's something that you can escape to and make you feel better about yourself, because this is something that gives you pleasure and it keeps you at peace and it keeps you at mind. Now, let's say in the future that you then grow up with this problem where you're now reliant on alcohol, or you're reliant on this drug, or you're reliant on this, work, for example, because it keeps you, in a sense, safe. It keeps you peace and calm, but it's numbed you so much that you can't actually live without it. So then you're like, okay, well, I need to stop drinking alcohol. I need to stop doing these drugs. So you put them away, as a metaphor. You decide not to do it anymore. But because you're so accustomed to them, you can become tempted by them again. And like when somebody says, "Oh, let's have a drink," and you're like, you'll find it really hard to resist, because that's all you've known, so to speak. That's all you want. But you know that drink or that drug will be the demise of you, so to speak. You're trying your best to resurrect yourself, so to speak, from this drug because you're so reliant on it. And you're trying to not be so a slave to your body, wanting this substance just to be functional. So in the end, these temptations actually come from our own desires, because we desire that comfort. We desire that drug or that drink just to keep calm and feel at peace. And sometimes it can be so ingrained into, in a sense, our ego, that most of the time, the ego takes the reins of our thinking, our mentality, our attitudes, and it's the one that reacts emotionally rather than responding by taking a step back. And if our ego is not tamed, it is the one that acts on our temptations. If we don't stand back and be like, okay, I can see that I'm tempted by this. Why am I tempted by this? Where is this temptation coming from? Where is this desire coming from to have this, to possess this? What do I feel insecure about myself, or what's missing in my life that I feel like I need this substance, or I need this drug or work or even pornography, or I need, these constant relationships. Why do I need this person's validation or acceptance or affection? Why do I need this specific thing to function? And once when we bring that more into awareness, the more ability that we then have that choice. We then have that ability to choose whether we want to go down that path or not, or, to fight against it, or find something else that is a lot more beneficial or productive for us. And it continues on, these desires give birth to sinful actions. And now the word sinful, if you're not a Christian or if you're not following, along the religion, it means just to miss the mark. Especially your own mark. If you uphold, for example, I don't feel, you can say if you're an alcoholic, drinking is not good for me. It is destroying my mental state, and is destroying my relationships, because I'm so reliant on alcohol more than, relying on people to help me out of, uncomfortable situations. So when you fall back into taking a drink rather than reaching out to someone, you've sinned, because you've missed the mark. You've missed your own mark that you've put up for yourself. So the desires, falling into these temptations, give birth to sinful actions. And it continues on. And when sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death. So continuously missing the mark, continuously doing the thing that is not right, that is not right, would lead you to death, even as maybe not a physical death, but definitely a mental death. And that's where addictions now fall into. When you become addicted to something, so reliant on something, you're now a slave to your body. You become dead. You can no longer stand against your body and say, no, I don't want this. This is not right. This is wrong. This isn't helping me. This isn't helping anyone. It's destructive, and it's not productive or constructive towards my future. And this is one reason why these verses stood out to me so much, is because it's along the path of a king mindset, or reflecting on our attitudes. Always drawing into yourself, and always, bringing your attention to yourself, bringing awareness to yourself of, is this action of what I'm doing, is it really benefiting anyone or myself? Or is it benefiting only myself? Are other people, not benefiting from it? I can't think of the word right now. But are they being left out? Are you not reaching out to them to see if they're okay? Are you doing something that's a bit selfish for your own self, for your own benefit? And there's nothing wrong with doing something for yourself, of course, because you need to look out for yourself. But you also, if it's becoming in between you and your friends, or you and your family, and that's where it becomes destructive. That's when it becomes you isolating yourself from the community, because as a whole, we need to be relying on each other to have the most beneficial, peaceful life, looking out for one another, make sure we're all getting enough food in our bellies, make sure we're all having a roof over our heads, making sure that we all have an income so that we can actually provide for ourselves, making sure that we're all emotionally taken care of. Is everyone being heard? Is everyone being seen? Because if that substance or if that thing is distracting you, or if it's disconnecting you and getting in the way of connecting to your friends and family, then that's the problem. That's where it's becoming sin, and that leads to death. You isolating yourself from the community is, in a sense, killing yourself. You're shooting yourself in the foot, so to speak. And being brought up in the church, sometimes we come across this concept of, the devil's always getting in our way, or, the devil is tempting me. But we give way too much credit to the devil. We are the ones that create our own desires. Just as it says here, temptation comes from our own desires, which entice us and drag us away. It's the attitudes and the mentalities that we've learnt as we've grown up. A baby doesn't really care about Gucci shoes or a Gucci handbag or Gucci sunglasses, so to speak. We desire those things later in life when we see there's value to them on a superficial status level. And we try and be better in society, or appear to be better in society, in our community. We buy these expensive things to give us a sense of status of our finances and of our power, so to speak. We apply those desires to ourselves. We apply those desires in our lives. No one else. The devil doesn't come along and be like, "Oh, here, I'm going to tempt you with this." If you're not attracted to, for example, Gucci wear, it's not going to obviously affect you. But we all have our own desires and our own, in a sense, status that we're trying to reach, a vision or a perception of ourselves that we want to portray, so that other people have this idea or feeling towards us, and make it and put us on a pedestal as if we're better than everyone else. We're trying to make people do that sometimes, and if we fall into this concept of wanting to make people think or perceive us in a certain way, then we're just being a slave to them and also our own bodies. And really, if you think, I have no temptations, my life is all Gucci. And if I ask you right now, for example, what is the best version of yourself? What is the ideal version of yourself? What do you see in the future? What would be the best version of yourself? What would you be doing? What would you be? Where would you be? What would you be living in? And then people would be like, "Oh, this, that, this, that." It's like, well, why aren't you there right now? "Oh, I've had this going on. I've had that." And it's just like, one example, and this is no, not in a sense putting anyone down, but it's a common example where people will be like, "Oh, if I didn't have kids or if I didn't have a family, then I would go do this and do that." And it's like, okay, well, I can see that you fell into, in a sense, you could say, the temptation of falling into a relationship. You fell into that concept of, I feel loved, I feel nourished, I feel cared for. I've got a partner. It's like, obviously you valued that more, and you fell into that temptation more than what you think your ideal version of yourself is supposed to be like, or you wanting it to be. And I get and I understand the concept of, feeling loved and feeling cherished and someone cares for you. Totally understand that. And that's just part of the human nature. And that's part of the great thing about having the human experience, is having to be able to share that love. But sometimes, even when you ask them, what's your ideal version of yourself, or where do you see yourself, and it's just like, and they have this vision of themselves where they'll be this kind of person, and they don't really mention their family or friends or anything. And it's just like, right now you're probably living in the best version of yourself right now, because you're surrounded by family, you're surrounded by friends, you have the greatest things, which are relationships, and a great sense of security right now with the people that you're surrounded with. Anyway, that's another topic as well. Anyway, let me know what you think about this episode, and hopefully it has helped you try and gain some awareness of your actions and owning your temptations, owning them, that they're yours, and that you've put them there, you've created them, and that you can change them. You don't have to fall into those temptations anymore. You can change your desires. You can change your outcome. There is always a choice in choosing which path you want to take. Do you want to still take this same old path where things don't change and things are always upsetting you, or it's always uncomfortable, it's always chaotic, it's all this tension all the time? No, you can change which path you're going to take. You can set up those boundaries for yourself. You can make rules for yourself in a sense and follow those rules. You know, I only choose to drink on Saturdays, you could say, and make that rule and stick to it so that you control alcohol, not alcohol control you, or not allow your bodily desires control you. Is a better way to say it, because alcohol has nothing to do with this. It doesn't choose for you how you're going to live your life. Only your body does, and your own decisions and your own actions. Anyway, hope you got something out of this, and I shall see you all next time. See you later, and king up.